Mhm.
All right, so we are starting today chapter 45. It's always exciting to start a new chapter. So you got a lot of strong ideas, and now we're ready for something new, something fresh, something we can focus on. And it's actually a topic we have not spoken about in a long time in Tanya. It is a topic we are going to talk about, but this is really the first chapter of it. It's the topic, it's the tool, the strategy of compassion. Meaning, in the last chapters, we spoke about love before they spoke about fear. In essence, you could sort of summarize Tanya and said we spent 40 chapters really focusing on natural love and created love and tuna and all different levels of love, 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 love. In chapter 41, we say, wait, fear is the most foundational thing, and we speak about fear. And then we speak about more fear in chapter 42. And then in 43, we discuss even higher levels. And then we morph back into love. And then in 44, we say, well, actually, you have two amazingly powerful loves that are natural and innate to your soul beyond the one amazing natural love we discuss in chapter 18 through 25. You have two more loves that are buried in your soul's powers. And we learned about both of them in the last chapter. And now we're discussing a completely new technique that we have never really touched on in Tanya in this context, which is the tool of compassion. I'm saying in this context because in chapter 32, we spoke about the idea of having compassion for people. If someone's a very troubled person, if someone creates a lot of problems in your life, instead of feeling angry and pain and maybe even hateful towards a person, have compassion. Have compassion for them, and in essence, have compassion for their soul trapped inside their own pain and torment and evil. But now we want to take this tool of compassion and focus it inward for our own soul. So if you remember from chapter 32, compassion is an incredibly powerful and practical tool. And as we learned in chapter 32, it frees us from hatred, it frees us from negative emotion, and it impacts and strengthens and brings out our love. Now, obviously, in the situation here, we're not worried about negative emotions. I mean, we're talking hopefully about healthy people. So it's not that we have negative emotions toward ourselves, but it's more like we aren't feeling it. We're trying, but it's just not happening. So compassion is a super powerful tool. So again, with people in your life, the tool of compassion, and it's very practical. I share this tool all the time. I find it works amazing. Always try to credit the Alter Rebbe and Tanya, that if someone is a painful person in your life, try to have compassion for them. Compassion for them in their pain, compassion for their soul trapped in their pain. And the more you have compassion, the less you can be hurt by them. Why? Because compassion mitigates the negative emotions and actually intensifies your love for the person. So compassion has a lot of power because if you've used it in this very practical way, if there's any difficult person in your life, and instead of getting angry at them, and instead of getting frustrated, instead of getting mad, instead of getting hateful, you feel compassion for them, and you're like, oh my gosh, why do I feel compassion for them? Well, they live with themselves all day long. Well, they're, stuck with themselves. They're always tormented. Sometimes, of course, they throw it on me, their garbage, but they're living with their garbage every second of their existence. Or if you're thinking on a more spiritual level, there's a soul inside, and that poor soul is not getting any oxygen. That poor soul is so trapped by the pains and limitations of the body, of the person. So you have tremendous compassion for the soul that's stuck in this very negative space. And when you try and use that tool, and I'm not taking a poll here who has, but it's amazing. Because when you're really feeling compassion for someone, you can't get hurt by them. You're really feeling compassion, you just are like awash in these positive, loving feelings for them. And even if they do the same thing they were doing before, it's irrelevant. It's like if a child would say these things to you, it's not going to hurt you. You're not going to get hurt by them. It's like you shifted the dynamics of the relationship when you have compassion. So that was really the only time so far in Tanya we've discussed this very powerful tool called compassion. And compassion is the inner expression of one of our foundational traits or bechinos, parallel to God's spheros. In the emotions, we have three primary traits, each of which creates an emotion for us. We have chesed, loving kindness, which is expressed. The inner quality of loving kindness is love. So that's the expression of that trait. We have gvura, strength, which in a expression of emotion, the inner dimension of that is fear and awe of God. And we have tiferes, which is usually translated as beauty, and the emotional expression of that is compassion. So we've spent a lot of ink in Tanya on love, the first of the emotions we possess. The chesed, loving kindness expressed in love. The bulk of Tanya is talking about love. We have recently focused on the second trait, gevura, strength, expressed in awe and fear, because that was chapter 41, 42, and a chunk of 43. And now we're focusing on the third trait. So this is like the triangle of our foundational emotions. Chesed, gevura, tiferes, love, fear, and compassion. That was supposed to look like a triangle. And so therefore, I'm pointing out compassion is very foundational. It's literally the support, the three foundational emotions from the three foundational emotive traits of our soul is the chesed, the love, the gvura, the fear, the awe, and the tiferes, the compassion. So it's not like, oh, a little minor, thing over there. It's really very powerful. And actually, it's in a sense a fusion of the other two. That's why tiferes, again, this trait is called tiferes, which is usually translated as beauty. It has a beauty, it has a special attraction because it's an amalgamation, it's a combination of like different colors, different energies. You have the loving kindness, chesed, you have the strength, the awe, the fear, gevura, and then when the two blend, you get the beauty of a combination of a variation, which is tiferes, which comes with the love and the awe. What comes forth is compassion. So that's why you could even think of it like that triangle, upside down triangle you might call it, where you have the right side is the love, the left side is the fear, and they funnel into the point of the triangle, the midpoint, which is combining both of these energies, which is a tiferes, which is the compassion. Actually, a Kabbalistic note that the Rebbe's father says, this is only going to really work well in the Hebrew, and even the Hebrew might be hard to follow it for me just saying it, but we'll try. If you miss it, you can just take it on faith. The Hebrew for compassion is the word rachamim. That is the Hebrew word for compassion, which again is the emotional expression of this trait, which is called tiferes, which translates as beauty. The Rebbe's father says that rachamim is a combination of two words, rach, resh ches, and the mim is really the word mayim. Again, this will only work in the Hebrew for people that can sort of envision this word. Rach, make a line down it, and then the final mem yud mem, mayim. Well, mayim, water, right? Mayim means water. Mayim, water, is the symbol of love, as we were discussing actually last week at length. That normally love is like water, it flows down, it nurtures. So water is a symbol of love. The resh ches, rach, is the same numerical value as the word Yitzchak. Rach is a numerical value 208, and Yitzchak, the Hebrew name of our second forefather Isaac, is also 208. So Rach and Yitzchak have the same numerical value. And as we have mentioned perhaps before, a numerical value isn't like, oh, that's a cute thing. It's not a cute thing. It's expressing a deep spiritual truth, because a name in the holy tongue is really its energy, its life force, because the world is created by God's speech. And the name of something is how God is speaking it into existence. So if two different items have the same numerical value, that means they have, on some level, a commonality in their name, because the numerical value reflects the energy of that name. So if there's a commonality in their name, it reflects that they have a shared space. So the first half of the word rachamim, rach, The numerical value 208 is the same as Isaac, Yitzchak, our second forefather, 208. And exactly that's the point I was going to say. Thank you, Nechama. What does Rach have to do with Yitzchak, with Isaac? Because he symbolizes strength, fear, Gevura. So as I said before, again, I didn't make this one up. This is the Rebbe's father writes this. We have Rachamim, which means compassion, Rach and Mim, Mayim. Rach is numerical value of 208, Isaac, Yitzchak, which symbolizes the strength, the fear, the awe. And Mim, Mayim, water, which is that downward flow, which is the chesed, the loving kindness, the love. So what was the point of all this, in case you couldn't follow the Hebrew and the many different things I was doing quickly, is saying Rachamim, compassion, is literally built into its name, showing you it's a composite of fear and love. As I said, that triangle, the right side is love, the left side is fear. They funnel into that point on the bottom, amalgamate the mixture, Rachamim, compassion. The love and the fear, the Rach, the fear, the Mayim, the love, form Rachamim, compassion. So it's considered like this perfect blend of all the movements of the right, the love, and of the left, the fear and the awe. And from there comes compassion. So from all of this, even if you didn't follow exactly the details, it's saying this is a very powerful force we have inside of us. This is an enormous force. This is not, this is compassion. No. This is, as we're saying, foundational. These are the three foundational traits: chesed, love, gevura, awe, and fear, and tiferes, compassion. So when we're pulling on our compassion, we're pulling on a huge force inside of us. So until now in Tanya, as I said, we only used it once in chapter 32 in a very, very powerful way. And I hope that many of you have used that technique, which we discussed in chapter 32, and which I freely share at other moments, because it's so powerful and it works so well. And we see the energy of compassion to free us from hatred and negative emotions and to express a lot of love. Now we want to take that same trait of compassion and have compassion on our soul. We want to look inward. And again, we want it to free the soul by having tremendous compassion for our soul, stuck in our body, stuck in this physical reality, perhaps stuck within our transgressions and sins. And we want to take the same powerful trait of compassion, and just like there with another person, it freed us of the negative energy, freed us of hatred, allowed us to feel real love for the person. Here, we want to really use this as a tool to free ourselves. Just one caveat, and then we're going to start reading, is a person could say, it's a lot easier to have compassion for a person than to have compassion for your soul. You might say, no, I don't think that at all. I think it'd be much easier to have compassion for my soul than for compassion for a difficult person. Why would I have compassion for a difficult person? But for some of us, a person is like, they're there. And you can find reasons to have compassion. And when you see a person is really troubled, and even if they're abusive in a negative space, difficult, you understand they're stuck in a lot of pain. Maybe they went through a lot of hard things in their life. So it's a human being. It's a little easier for us to relate to than compassion for my soul, stuck in my body, stuck in this world, stuck in my sins. So if it seems hard to relate to having compassion for your soul, what I'd advise is climb the ladder, meaning the ladder of feeling comfortable and natural extracting your trait of compassion. So start by having compassion on another person, because that's very natural for us. You see a person, you see they're in pain. It doesn't even have to be a person that's difficult, and you're using it like the Alter Rebbe suggests in Tanya, to have compassion, to feel positive and not negative emotions for someone. Look at a person who's in trouble, a person who has a hard life, a person who's suffering, and have compassion for them very consciously. Then you could maybe upgrade and have compassion for someone like the Alter Rebbe suggests, who's difficult. So maybe it's a little harder to have compassion because they're really difficult, they're really annoying, they're really stressful, they create problems in your life. And instead of feeling annoyed, angry, upset, hurt, hateful towards them, have compassion. They're stuck in a lot of pain to be acting this way. And let it become natural to you having compassion for difficult people, which is much more natural than it might sound. Like if you've never done it, it might be like, what? It's actually a very healthy emotion, and it flows very naturally. When we're scaffolding up our ladder here. When it's natural for you to feel compassion for someone who's a difficult person, now work on having compassion for the soul of that person. I mean, it's easy to think of someone else's soul sometimes than your own. And if a person's a difficult person with a difficult personality or with a very hard life that acts it out in many hard ways, you could sort of think of their soul. This is a piece of God. God's essence is trapped in this person. My gosh, how this soul must be suffering. The soul came into this world only to serve God, to illuminate the world, to illuminate this world with the light of Torah and the commandments. And look what the soul is going through. The soul has been in this person for 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years. And it's just negativity and pain and harshness and sin. And oh my gosh, what that soul is feeling. Feel compassion for that soul. And as you more and more can feel compassion for souls of people that it's very obvious to you how difficult the life of that soul must be in that person, it just becomes more and more natural to truly feel compassion for a soul. Not like, yeah, I'm saying the words. To truly feel compassion for the soul. And then, after you have compassion for people, after you have compassion for difficult people, after you have compassion for the souls of difficult people, now you can very naturally, because it's such a powerful muscle inside of you, have compassion for your own soul. You could say, me, it's not such a bad situation. It's not, my soul gets a lot of oxygen. My soul gets a lot of Torah. My soul gets a lot of commandments and mitzvahs. My soul's not so bad space. Okay, but if we think about where our soul really wants to be and how our soul volunteered to come into this world only for the purpose of illuminating the world for God, for the purpose of serving God in this world, and understanding that every minute that she's connected to God is such a release, is such a pleasure, it's so beautiful for the soul. And every other minute is so hard for the soul. And anytime the soul is not connected, she feels such pain of the disconnect. You can start feeling compassion for your soul. And as we learn the chapter, we'll see how powerful that emotion is. So let's look inside. Does this road seem like a road that maybe will be easier for you than some of the other techniques of Tanya? Is anyone like listening to it and thinking, oh, that's sort of doable? I think that could be very useful to me. Is it resonating with anyone yet?
Yes, I liked this path. I think that's yeah, because first when you said compassion for my own soul, I'm like, what? But when you explained the like steps, it makes sense. Yeah.
Great, great. And Nechama said yes too. We got a nice smiling chat there. I really want you to realize how doable this is. And this sort of flows into the next chapters, which are built on the concepts we're going to discuss in chapter 45. So it's a really powerful, practical chapter, meaning in 45 and in 46 and in 47. We're going to be discussing concepts that we're not getting loftier and harder and more abstruse. We're really getting into chapters that should feel, if you're open to the experience, like I was saying, I think I could do that one. Because that's what the Alter Rebbe wants. He wants you to try it. And he's calling this a very straight path. It's a straight path. Just my own thought. The Rebbe here, in using compassion, which is the emotional inner expression of the trait of tiferes, beauty, harmony, balance, the Rebbe says this is the derech yeshara. It's a straight path to access your soul, to uplift your soul, to oxygenate your soul, to free your soul. And I thought it was very interesting. This is from the Alter Rebbe. And our Rebbe, when he was speaking about bringing Mashiach, obviously he said many things about bringing Mashiach, but he spoke very strongly that there's a derech yeshara, straight path to bringing Mashiach. And he defined the straight path as using Malchus Shebetif'eres. Malchus Shebetif'eres decoded means learn Torah about Mashiach, and that's the straight road to bringing Mashiach. I thought it was interesting because nothing is random, and I'm like, The straight path to free our soul is this trait of tiferes, beauty, harmony, truth, balance. And the straight path to bring Mashiach is also using tiferes, beauty, harmony, truth, the study of Torah. So there's some energy here that this tiferes quality has that gives us an ability, call it the straight road, the direct road, the easy road. You could say nothing sounds so easy when I'm talking about my spiritual journey, but within all the options and strategies and tools that the Rebbe is giving us, this tool that we're going to be discussing in this chapter is the straight path. So looking inside, chapter 45, Od yesh derech yashar lifnei ish. There's another straight path. This is, by the way, the first time the Rebbe uses that term, the straight path. We're going to have it again soon in a different chapter that we're going to learn very soon. But this is the beginning of you can be walking a straight road. Straight road meaning doable, attainable. I'd say easy, but in a sense, what can be easy in our spiritual journey? But relatively speaking, an easy road, a straight road, a road where you know you're going to reach your goal. So there's another road, a straight road. Again, this is the first time we're going to utilize this term, a straight road. Lifnei ish, before a person, la'asok b'torah mitzvos lishman, to attain this beautiful desired goal of serving God purely, studying Torah and doing the commandments for the sake of God, altruistically, purely, meaning on a very spiritual level. Because we all have this, radio station that we get turned into, what's in it for me? And also our service to God can be tuned into that channel of what's in it for me. And that's okay. That's okay. Because in the end of the day, God wants us to serve. And if the motivation for our service is what's in it for me, you're serving. God says, I'm very grateful. I'm very happy. I'm happy you're partnering with me. I'm happy you're transforming the world. I'm happy you're bringing the redemption. What's in it for you? Lots and lots and lots of great benefits. But sometimes we'd like to shift from that channel. And it shouldn't just be a what's in it for me relationship. The Rebbe says we want to serve God for God's sake. And this quality of tiferes, of compassion, is a tool how to get on that straight path to this beautiful goal. Through the attribute of Yaakov, of Jacob, of our forefather. We have the patriarchs, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. And each of the patriarchs embodied one of God's foundational emotive traits. It's not, just as I said before, numerical value of gematria is not just like a cute little thing. It has tremendous spiritual import. So also here, it's not like, well, I have the three forefathers and I have the three foundational emotive traits, so let's make a match. No. Each one truly embodied these traits. That's why there were three, because we have these three foundational traits. So Abraham, he was such an embodiment of love that we're told that God's trait of loving kindness said, I'm out of business. Abraham's doing this all for me. He was literally God's love embodied in this world. The next forefather, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, Yitzchak, Isaac, was the human embodiment of God's strength, of God's judgment, precision, which is emotionally expressed as fear, as awe. Remember, we spoke about that with rachamim, mercy. The rach is numerical value of Isaac, of Yitzchak, because that's strength, that's fear. And the third of the forefathers, Yaakov, Jacob, is the emotional embodiment of compassion. Abraham is chesed, loving kindness, love. Isaac, Yitzchak, is gevurah, strength. The emotional expression is fear. And Yaakov, Jacob, is the embodiment of tiferes, of balance, of harmony, of beauty, which is emotionally expressed as compassion. Again, what are we pointing out here? This is a powerful tool. The ultimate forefather of the Jewish people embodied the most foundational trait, chesed, loving kindness, love. He was the human embodiment of love. This isn't, a little thing up my sleeve. This is huge. This is a huge power by God. Jacob was the ultimate forefather, as we're saying, triangle. We have love, we have fear. They combine the perfect blending, the perfect balance, compassion. That's why we're told, in a sense, one of the reasons why Jacob was considered the ultimate one of the forefathers, that he was able to combine the virtues of Abraham, of love, and of Isaac, of fear, and they funneled into him, combined in him, became that ultimate, unstoppable forefather, Yaakov, Jacob, compassion. And when I say unstoppable, we're told that Abraham obviously embodied truth and Isaac embodied truth, but Jacob was limitless truth, that nothing could oppose it. Things can oppose love, like fear. Things can oppose fear, like love, but nothing can oppose compassion. It's absolute truth, because truth never ends. So compassion, tiferes, is beauty, the blending, is harmony and balance, the blending, is absolute truth. Nothing can stop it. Truth never stops. And is, as I mentioned before, Torah, because that's what Torah is, the piercing truth of God that penetrates every level of creation, and is our trait of compassion, that also in every situation can extract that godliness. Nothing can stop it. It's this balanced, perfect quality that can penetrate every situation. So we're saying here, this is a tremendously powerful tool you have here. This is what Jacob embodied. And Jacob is the ultimate forefather. Shehi midas harachamim, the trait of compassion. So now that we gave a little background on how powerful this is, what are we doing with it? L'oirer b'machshavto tchila rachamim rabim, to initially arouse in his thoughts tremendous compassion, not like, yeah, no, like tremendous compassion, lifnei havaya, before God, al nitzos elokus, on that spark of God. Your soul is literally a piece of God. The essence of my soul and your soul is from God's essence. Everything is godliness. That's the only building block there is. This hand sanitizer is godliness. When Mashiach comes, when the redemption comes, we'll look at it and see the godly energy. Now we look and see hand sanitizer. But of course it's ultimately godliness. What else could it be? There's nothing else for anything to be. But my soul is God essence. Everything is godliness. The ray, the aura, the energy of. My soul is God's very being and self. The core of my soul is from the core of God's essence. So if you think about that, and then you think of some of the places your soul has been to, courtesy of being in a body, courtesy of being in a physical world, courtesy of being in my not always perfect behaviors, you can feel compassion. Does this translate to you? Can you envision yourself doing this? Obviously, it means you have to take the time. You have to think. But the Rebbe is telling you, this isn't doable road. I was going to say easy, but you feel bad saying easy because it might take that scaffolding and that ladder, but it's doable. It's doable to feel compassion for someone who we would say, of course, deserves compassion. It's also, you learn to be doable to have compassion for people in pain that might be harsh to you, but you can have compassion for them in their stuck state. And then it's doable to go beyond that and have compassion for their soul that's stuck in them. And now your trait of compassion has become strong and natural, easily accessed. You can turn it to yourself. Not that you're a harmful person or in a very bad situation where your soul never gets oxygen. But guess what? As the Rebbe is going to say, the very fact that your soul is stuck in a body already is hard for the soul. All the soul wants is God. Every one of our souls volunteered to be in this world. Baba Rebbe learns this out from the verse, when you go out to battle your enemy, and that battle It speaks of in many places is the battle of our soul in this world. It's fighting the wars of God. And Rashi, the classical commentator, says, when you go out to fight this battle, we're talking about a voluntary warfare. The Lubavitcher Rebbe says, voluntary warfare. This is a soul fighting the wars of God in this world. This is voluntary? This is voluntary. What's voluntary about it? I've got a lot of commands on me. None of them are voluntary. The voluntary piece is that my soul chose to be here. And all our soul wants is to be with God. Our soul loves God. Our soul absolutely wants God. And the way to be with God in this world, as we're going to discuss in this chapter, the only way is when we're learning Torah, we're doing the commandments. So right now at this moment, if everyone, I see black screens, if everyone is paying attention, is with me, their mind is following, if not, please ask questions, we're all studying Torah at this moment. All of our souls are free. All of our souls are soaring. All of our souls are one with God, like bliss. And when the class is over, or if you space out, or if you get distracted, done. The soul crash landed back in planet Earth, in our bodies, in all the prisons that our body means for the soul. So when we think about this, we can feel compassion for her because am I every second connected to God? I mean, I would like to be. Ideally, I should be. God wants me to. Always. There are 6 constant commandments of loving, fearing, believing in God and such similar ones. So I could every second be serving God, but sometimes I'm not. And if I'm not, any moment I'm not, it's like the prince is back in prison. The soul is back, crashed, chained. So do these thoughts seem like thoughts you could think and would resonate? Does it seem like realistic to you as a road you could take now that we're discussing it more and reading it and you're sort of getting a feel for what this means, what the Rebbe is calling the straight road, the derech yashar? Straight road meaning the attainable, doable, accessible path. Do you have any questions on any of the technical? Obviously, we haven't read most of it inside, but just as far as you understand now, the technicalities of what you're going to be doing, do you see how you could apply this to your life?
Hi, Rebbitzin.
Hi.
So the first thing that I would love to have the video, the recording, because the first part was really, really amazing, about the rachamim, about the compassion. And as far as derech hayashar, I mean, yeah, I think so. If we do our avoda, the daily avoda, then Hashem shows himself somehow in something over the day that, things don't go well. And, I forgot my yom today and I didn't do my parasha yet. So then I'll go and do it and then boom. And then I think, okay, he just missed me and he wanted me to be there. So now I know, Hashem, I'll try, tomorrow I'll try better. But of course, things happen and you cannot always do it all at once. So.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So what Rachel is saying is that she sees in her personal life, because I was asking if we're trying to apply this to our personal life. Like, again, Tanya is not a book of philosophy. It's not a book of theology. It's a handbook of work to become a person who's very close to God. And Rachel is saying that she sees in her life that when she stays focused, stays on task, like the day flows. And when she loses it and didn't do what she wanted to do and didn't do her spiritual commitments, like something happens in the day and she's like, wait, what's going on? Oh, I forgot what I was supposed to be doing. I got off task. I forgot how I was supposed to be serving God. And that is really beautiful. I don't know if everyone merits to that, though I'm sure maybe others of you can say the same experience. But it's really beautiful because then you just see how enormously close God is. And I think for myself, when those things happen to me, maybe slightly different experiences, but when I feel God's almost instant response to my behaviors, I feel like on one hand, wow, every little thing really makes a big difference. But yeah, I do agree with Rachel. And I think thinking these thoughts does make the compassion more realistic. Because the more realistically you see the hand of God in every detail of your life, the more realistically you can feel the reality of your soul and feel compassion for your soul when she's stuck in you, in this world, in this body, in a transgression. Read some more, and hopefully it will become more and more clear. Again, let's always remind ourselves. I know I've said it a few times because I want us all to know. This is the straight road. We've been learning a lot in the past 44 chapters. The Rebbe has never used that term yet, which means what the Rebbe is saying is, I've given you a lot of tools. I've given you a lot of instruction. I've given you a lot of strategies. And you've reached a point where I can now show you things that are, in a sense, simpler, more easy to access. On the foundation of all the knowledge you have, you can go in this direction and you'll find it like, wow, that works so well. I don't know if anyone here ever like tried to do a certain strategy and they're like, maybe yes, maybe no. And then like, it's like, that works so well. That was so powerful. They were saying, yeah, this works really well. This is the straight road. So we're looking at that piece of God, the core of our soul, hamachaya nafsho, that's giving life to the entirety of our soul. Now, first thought of like, why do I have compassion for my soul? I have compassion for this piece of God. Asher yarad min kairo chaye hachaye mein sof baruch hu, that descended from her source, the life of all life, the infinity of God. Hamemale kol almin, God who fills all the worlds. V'soivev kol almin, an even more powerful dimension of God that we would translate as who encompasses all the worlds. V'kulakaima kol chashiv, even more powerful dimension of God, where all of creation is like completely irrelevant. God is beyond it all. So we gave a few expressions here to remind ourselves. Again, you could say, why is the Alter Rebbe teaching me this now? You know, aren't you supposed to start with the easy stuff? Like, shouldn't you have taught me this in like chapter 1? Why are you thinking about by the way, after 44 chapters, I have an easy path for you. But the point is, it's easier now than if it had been in chapter 1 or 10 or 20, because all of these concepts of God's reality should be so natural to us by now, should be so real to us that we can feel compassion. But if it's just a bunch of words and terms that are like sort of remote and you can't exactly wrap your head around them, well, then it's hard to feel compassion for a term, for a word. But now at this point in your learning, when we've been saturated in these ideas for 44 chapters, like, we know what this means. So it's not a word. There's a whole wealth behind those words that we can feel this emotion of compassion for a spiritual entity, for God within my soul. So we are the first thing we did was describe the enormity of God. Why don't I want to talk about the enormity of God? Of course, I know the enormity of God, as I'm saying. That could be why we're learning this now in chapter 45, because I really know the enormity of God by chapter 45. Good, that's the point. Because you have compassion when you understand where your soul came from and where she has arrived to. So if I don't remember what it means, this God, energy of God, that is the core of my soul. Again, that's the point we said a few minutes ago. Your soul is not like my hand sanitizer. It's not godliness. This whole world is godliness. It's God himself. The core of every soul of every Jew is God. So if you think of God, for whom, what is creation? God fills and gives life to every detail of creation. More strongly than that, God creates the essence existence. And an even higher dimension is, what is existence? What is any creation compared to God? And from that God for whom what is existence anyway, came the core of my soul. If I can stretch to understand the greatness, I can have compassion for the soul that came down into what sometimes is the filth of this world. This world could be a very beautiful place. This world could be God's garden. But it could also be the filth and evils of this world. And if I'm feeling compassion, that's the direction I'm going. So the more God is real, the more compassion for my soul is real. Which again is probably, I would assume, why the Rebbe gives us this very straight road only in chapter 45. Because by chapter 45, God should be very real. And the more real God is, the more real the compassion is. Because the more real the descent is. So that's where the soul came from. And where did she go to? V'nislabesh b'mishcha dechivya. And she's engarbed in the skin of the snake. Now, the skin of the snake metaphorically means us, our bodies. Why are we calling it the skin of the snake? Well, we could analyze it a lot, but basically it's a term to express the negativity. Like the skin, this outer garment, because that's what the body is for the soul. It's just this outer garment. It's skin. My whole body is skin for my soul. But it's not just skin. It's snake skin. Because, of course, the snake metaphorically represents evil. As, of course, the primordial sin was the snake. And there's many, 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 many other ways we could explain this as well, more and more Kabbalistically. But just on the most simple level, it's the skin, like my body is a soul skin, and it's the skin of a snake. It's an evil skin that my soul is encased in. Now, again, I don't want to knock us too much because then it could sort of almost be depressing. So obviously, I could actually twist this around and show the skin of the snake in this very positive way. But that's clearly not the intention of the Rebbe here. Sarah.
The skin replaces itself.
Yes, yes. And the snake sheds its skin, and that does have implications here. And again, as I was alluding and actually not planning to say, because I didn't want to confuse anyone.
I couldn't hold myself back.
That's
Sorry.
fine. It's a great, and you could have been saying that snake skin is a pretty expensive thing nowadays. But the skin of the snake is not a unique description to the Alter Rebbe, meaning that is Kabbalistically a term for the body, the skin of the snake. And as Sarah is pointing out, it could have positive connotations. And yes, there are ways to positively understand as the snake sheds its skin, and that could relate to us shedding and leaving the evil of the snake behind. Because of course, ultimately, we're here for our body. We're here for our animal soul. Remember, we said the souls are volunteers. We are our soul. We came into this world to volunteer for God. And what does God need from me? He needs me to refine my body and my animal soul. You know, sometimes people in this world feel like stuck or frustrated, or like their talents and gifts are not being utilized. Like, I want to turn over this world for God, but nobody's really interested in hearing my voice. Or how do I turn over this world for God? I don't know. I'm in my house. I mean, whatever things I can do, but it's not very big, grandiose things that are going to transform the world. We have to remember the primary reason we are here, all of us, is to refine ourselves, our body and our animal soul. And no matter how small you might be in anyone else's eyes, this is you, your body, your animal soul. From the moment you're born, your entire life, you are dealing with your body and your animal soul, and no one can impact or transform your body and your animal soul except you. So even if you're stuck in your house or stuck in a small job, a small position, and you feel like I have big powers, or I want to be big, or I want to serve. I came to this world to serve. What am I doing? You're learning Torah and doing the commandments. Every moment you do that, you're transforming your animal soul and transforming your body. And that's why we're in this world. And yes, as Sarah said, the metaphor of the skin of the snake could definitely express the transformation of the body, because we don't want to look around the world and say, oh yeah, I feel a lot of compassion for my soul because this is such a horrible body and such a horrible world. And we want to balance it and say, this world is God's garden. We just don't see it yet because Mashiach hasn't been fully revealed. This is God's choice place of delight. This world will soon be revealed as God's garden. By Mashiach, It says the power of the soul will feed the power of the body will feed the soul. The spiritual energy of the body is even more intense from a certain perspective than the energy of the soul itself. So we don't look at our body and say, ugh. We don't look at our animal soul and say, horrible. We don't look at this world and say, evil. But here, in this context, we want to focus in that direction to feel compassion for the soul stuck. But then when we remember that every time we serve, she's free, and the body's no longer the prison, the body could be the garden. The animal soul could be God's garden. That's what happens when we study Torah and do the commandments. So it's the prison, it's evil, it's a snakeskin. Sometimes it's a beautiful garden. Most definitely when we're serving God and refining this world and revealing this world to be God's most precious garden, which will be fully actualized by the redemption, which we're bringing by our efforts. But for now, when we think of the skin of the snake, and I wasn't planning on going into all this that Sarah mentioned because I didn't want to confuse anyone. Yes, we think of it in the simple way. Actually, the Rebbe even comments on this like, oh, the skin of the snake could be a positive term. The Rebbe says, well, clearly here from the context, we're just supposed to view it as a negative term. We don't want to get complicated. It's a negative term because we're supposed to feel compassion. Look where she came from. Wow. Look what she came to. Oy. That's the compassion.